Is this how the Clippers are going to look next season? Hey, do you want to win a PS5 with Madden NFL 21 and NBA 2K21? We'll be announcing the winner December 28th, so be sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, turn on post notifications, and watch the video all the way until the end to enter the giveaway. Before we start the video, we want to mention that we're going to be sharing some very exclusive information, so make sure you guys watch the video all the way until the end because we may have just found where Russell Westbrook will be finishing off the rest of his NBA career. It's come as no surprise that the Los Angeles Clippers will be on the lookout for some additional pieces to bulk up their roster ahead of the 2020-21 season. As such, one area that's been heavily magnified since the offseason commenced was their need for a better point guard to help run the offense. While Patrick Beverley is certainly a defensive-minded floor general who can impose some defensive stops when their offense isn't going to plan, he's also not a part of the solution to that shaky offense. There's been recent development including both James Harden and Russell Westbrook, stating a certain level of uncertainty in their respective futures with the Houston Rockets franchise. In turn, it leaves both superstars possibly open to the option of being traded to another contender in better shape of making a true championship run next year. More so, the Clippers have reportedly expressed interest in Westbrook, and now Russell reportedly wants out of Houston. With that, the Clippers will very well end up being a prime destination for Westbrook, seeing as how they will likely be on the lookout for another guard in the backcourt. Even so, working out a deal for the 9-time All-Star can become as easy as this. The Clippers easily have enough value to bring to the table for Westbrook, and this is what they will offer. The Clippers receive Russell Westbrook, and the Rockets get Montrezl Harrell, Lou Williams, and Patrick Beverley. The Rockets are still trying to go by the metrical tendencies on the court versus the actuality of what works in order to make a team successful. A nod to that was in their decision to ship off Clint Capella last season in an effort to go with a smaller lineup that included PJ Tucker being slotted to the center position. With that being said, they'll likely be looking to re-up on a big in exchange for Westbrook after watching that experiment fail. My man PJ Tucker was going up against 7-foot centers and getting bullied like it was nothing. Harrell is coming off his best year to date, earning him the 6th Man of the Year award. Even so, his talents could likely best be suited in a starting lineup where he could provide more physicality and paint presence. He averaged 18.6 points on 58% shooting from the field this past season, all while on 27.8 minutes per game. He also averaged 7.1 rebounds per game, which is likely to go up if he finds himself on the Rockets with an increase in minutes. Even so, the Clippers have a little bit of dirty work to do before they can make a deal with Harrell included. Lou Williams and Patrick Beverley are two additional guards that could be of much service to the Rockets in the absence of Westbrook. By adding both of them, the money and scenario could certainly work out. Now make sure you guys continue watching because I'm going to be going into the ultimate reason as to why the Clippers are going to be trying their hardest to trade for Russell Westbrook. From the Rockets' perspective, Russell Westbrook isn't worth much due to the horrific playoff performance he had in the bubble. With that being said, the Clippers might swap Marcus Morris for Montrezl Harrell in this trade package. The Rockets would get Marcus Morris, Lou Williams, and Patrick Beverley. Any deal that the Clippers attempt to swing without involving a third party would likely have to include both Beverley and Williams, with Beverley being included at the least. Beverley's due $13.3 million next year, which will be instrumental in any momentum for the Clippers being able to land Westbrook. Basically, it's fancy math and the numbers have to match. As for Williams, he presents that all-around talent aspect that the Rockets will likely covet in return. He's a former 6th Man of the Year representee like Harrell and can pour on points in a hurry. He also fits the bill if the Rockets are still looking to deploy the small ball routine going forward. Still, the dark horse in this equation is Marcus Morris, who is set to be an unrestricted free agent and will field offers from multiple teams. The good news for the Clippers though is Morris's projected value in free agency, which will likely decrease compared to his $18 million salary he's coming off of this season. The Clippers were able to acquire Morris from the New York Knicks last season, with the Knicks opting to take their favorite route of overpaying veterans with no clear direction in mind. As such, Morris didn't turn out an $18 million performance with the Clippers, finding himself in a logjam with a roster brimming with talent. However, Morris will still command a decent contract despite his decrease in production. If he wants to help skip the offseason stress of playing poker with teams that'll have enough cap space to bring him aboard, he could also opt for a sign-and-trade that could land him on a decent contender with the Rockets. He'll likely come in on a team-friendly deal with the Rockets, but he'll also see a major bump in minutes since Houston could use some physical presence at the forward spot. Now look, I know what you're thinking. Why isn't Paul George included in this trade package? Well, obviously the Clippers are going to be trying their hardest to make up a trade package that doesn't include Paul George. They want to make a big three of Kawhi, PG, and Westbrook, so the trade scenarios we mentioned earlier are the most likely to happen. But if the Rockets don't budge and demand Paul George, then this is what's going to happen. The Houston Rockets are apparently open-minded to the prospect of trading Russell Westbrook, and the Los Angeles Clippers have some interest in the high-octane point guard. Furthermore, there have been reports that the Clippers are looking to make a roster-altering transaction or two this offseason. And finally, even Westbrook wants out of Houston. Now make sure you guys continue watching because I'm going to be going into detail and exclusive information on how this trade will definitely happen and why it makes sense. The Rockets will make a direct trade between PG and Russell Westbrook, and here's why. The Rockets have tried close to everything when it comes to putting players around James Harden. Dwight Howard, a group of reliable complementary players, Chris Paul and Russell Westbrook. Are they ever going to win a championship with Harden and Westbrook at the helm? Houston has never surrounded Harden with a premier forward. In new head coach Stephen Silas's rotation, George would be that premier forward. Maybe Silas wants to shake things up. Yes, he inherits a roster that was firmly embedded in Mike D'Antoni's up-tempo, guard-oriented offense. But with both D'Antoni and Daryl Morey out of the picture, Silas could propose to upper management that Harden can be the sole ball handler with George serving as the team's number 2 scorer. In such a role, George would play off the ball more. Regardless of his team's shortcomings in winning a conference championship in recent memory, George is one of the elite scorers in the NBA. He plays well in isolation and is a considerable shooter from distance and off the dribble. George is also a respectable on-ball and perimeter defender. Last season, he averaged 21.5 points per game while shooting a career-high 41.2% from beyond the arc. Houston has an array of scorers. Harden is the best scorer in the sport. Eric Gordon effectively attacks off the dribble. PJ Tucker and Robert Covington fire from deep. Daniel House is a scrappy scorer. Austin Rivers takes what the defense gives him. Rivers could either play off the ball in the starting 5 or continue to be an effective two-way player off the bench. Paul George wouldn't be perfect for the Rockets, but they can make it work. In acquiring Covington at this year's NBA trade deadline, the Rockets shipped out mainstay center Clint Capella and went all in on severe small ball play with players like Tucker and Covington being the tallest players on the floor. This offseason, they could take a 90-degree turn, signing a couple of veteran centers to assume 15 to 20-minute roles, adding some roster variety. In a way, they'd be trying out the Clippers' 2019-20 offense. 2 ball-dominant wings forwards, outside shooting, and complementary point guards and big men. A Harden-George duo is more likely to win the Western Conference than a Harden-Westbrook duo. They're a better shooting combo and shouldn't severely impede the other's offensive tendencies. From a career path standpoint, they've each been unable to win a ring on their own or with other star players. Maybe they can break through together. If a George-included Rockets team fails to yield profound results, they can part ways next offseason, as George has an opt-out for the 2021-22 NBA season. Now, why would the Clippers make this happen, you ask? Kawhi Leonard and Paul George on the front line with a backcourt that stretched the floor and moved the ball was working for the Clippers. That was until it wasn't. Fresh off blowing a 3-1 second-round series lead to the Denver Nuggets, including 2 15-plus point second-half leads, and getting head coach Doc Rivers fired, all bets are off for the Clippers' future. Let's start off the Tyronn Lue era in style by getting him Westbrook to run his offense. In his 2.5 seasons coaching the Cleveland Cavaliers, specifically his 2015-16 championship team, Lue had an elite floor general in Kyrie Irving. He took some pressure off LeBron James and was money in the clutch. Albeit he's an inefficient shooter, Westbrook could be to Leonard what Irving was to James. Westbrook can co-run the offense in bringing the ball up the floor and initiating set plays, taking some attention off Leonard. By attacking the rim with tenacity, Westbrook draws double teams, which would open up some easy buckets for Leonard. Last season, Leonard and George were playing similar games, and it made the offense a bit predictable in crunch time in the playoffs. Sure, Lue was on the sidelines with his now predecessor for a couple seasons. At the same time, Lue may have a different vision than Rivers. Maybe he doesn't think Leonard and George can win a championship together? Perhaps he wants more of a commanding point guard? For better or worse, Russell Westbrook is as good as anyone in the sport at what he does. He's eccentric off the dribble, plays with an unstoppable motor, and flies coast to coast. Last season, he averaged 27.3 points, 7.9 rebounds, 7 assists, and 1.6 steals per game. He is who he is, and the fire he plays with could create a new identity for the Clippers organization. Leonard won an NBA championship with the Toronto Raptors while playing with a proven floor general, Kyle Lowry. He also won a championship with the San Antonio Spurs while playing with a trio of players who were franchise royalty, Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, and Manu Ginobili. Leonard can find a way to make it work with Westbrook. In between Westbrook and Leonard is a variety of scorers. Lou Williams is money off the dribble, Landry Shamet is an exceptional outside shooter, Patrick Beverley is a threat from distance, President Lawrence Frank can accumulate some veteran players to fill rotation voids like he did last offseason and throughout the course of the regular season. The Clippers can bring in a family therapist to get Westbrook and Beverley on the same page. Get that matter taken care of, and a Leonard and Westbrook-led offense is worth taking a flyer on. The Knicks, meanwhile, are just trying to acquire any star, and Westbrook fits that bill as well. It's going to be very interesting to see where Westbrook turns out playing next season. Drop a like on this video if you enjoyed. I'll catch you guys in the next one.